Hey everyone, my name is Joshua, and it's a privilege for me to be a part of Christian Careers Day 2020. So, a big shout out to the Gospel Growth Fellowship for hosting this brilliant opportunity for young people like yourselves to think about what it means to remain faithful to God despite its challenges and temptations which you will encounter in the workplace. So, in this talk, I'm going to share with you a framework or an approach to how to think about building or developing your own skill sets. It's something that I learned in my previous life as a management consultant. And when you think about it, it's something that Christians in a workplace can really benefit from as well. Now, I assume that most of you are still studying in university, and some of you are even still in school. And I'm sorry to start off by bursting your bubble, but we live in a time where education is no longer something special. Everyone's got a degree. Employers expect you to have a degree. Now, just last year, a study was conducted and it found that out of everyone who was unemployed in Malaysia, 60% of them are graduates. That comes to 200,000 people. And you know what? Most employers and companies, they still prioritize the same thing, last I checked, and that is their profit margins. They're always thinking about how they can get the best return for the money that they have spent or invested in. Especially now when the global economy has come to a standstill, most people are anticipating recession. And the thing that quickly follows recession is unemployment. Because companies are going to start cutting costs by laying off employees. Even at this point in time, companies have probably decided on who to keep and who to let go. Now, the question is, how do employers decide who to let go or not? Well, it's pretty simple, really. Let's say we have James and John, and they both earn 5,000 ringgit, and I get to choose one only. I'm going to keep the one who, in my mind, I value the most. So, this talk that I'm giving you today, it's to help you to be the one that your boss will choose to keep. I want you to be the one that your boss values. Now, when you and everyone else starts a new job, you go to work expecting something in return. You expect something in return for your services from your employer, right? So if you told me that, Joshua, I don't get paid, I'd be worried. And I might tell you to leave your job, unless it's like a short term internship or maybe it's a voluntary piece of work. But even then, today interns get paid. So we expect something from our employers. And let me illustrate these expectations for you with a diagram. To simplify things, people at work expect money, time, and career advancement. So the ideal situation would be we get paid a lot, we have a lot of time, and we get a lot of career advancement. Now, if you have all three of that, I'd say you've hit the trifecta. You got all three things. Unfortunately, it often doesn't work out like that in the real world. Instead, it's about weightage, it's about proportions. Maybe it's time that's the most important thing to you, or maybe it's money. Either way, people who go to work want these things from their employer. And how that triangle of proportions is shaped really shows what you ultimately treasure. As a Christian, we are called to love God and build His church and love His people. And whether you like it or not, it's probably going to need quite a lot of time and also some money. And that's what I want to equip you with today. I want to equip you with an understanding that can help you get the proportions that you want or need. You might be wondering, huh? How would that look like in the workplace? You see, how you relate with your employer and your colleagues is often going to be a negotiation. When a boss asks you to meet a deadline by 10 p.m. tonight, do you just say yes when you know that tonight at 8 o'clock you have a Bible study to attend? That means you will have to skip church Bible study to do work. Now, if you do that, it might mean you value career advancement more than you value time. Your triangle will probably look a bit like this. Or do you tell your boss that you can only deliver 50% of the work by 8 p.m. and he'll give you the feedback, and after the Bible study, you continue finishing the work and you'll get it to him by tomorrow morning? Now, this might affect your boss's opinion of you, and it may also affect your career advancement at work. You're telling your boss basically that you value time more than your career advancement. And so your triangle would look like this, perhaps. Now, what reason would your boss say yes to you without having it affect his impressions on you? Firstly, you would probably have already demonstrated to him that you are a valuable employee in the past. And the last thing that he would want to do is to stop a valuable employee of his or hers from doing what you treasure the most. And the other thing is that you have made it clear to him before that what is really important to you is going for that weekly Bible study. And who knows, that could be a brilliant opportunity to talk to your boss or your colleagues about why you treasure that Bible study time. Now, the question is, how do you become valuable to your employer? It's simple. You just have to stand out from among your peers, right? Now, the question is, how do you stand out? Well, I'll tell you what the average Malaysian typically does to stand out. A survey in 2017 revealed that Malaysians work the longest hours each week. Apparently, we work even more than Singaporeans and Hong Kongers who are so famous for their long hours at work. You can probably imagine how the proportions would look like for them, right? So it seems that the old-fashioned idea that to impress our bosses is to say, I need to come in early to work and leave late. That saying is still very much alive here in Malaysia. We want our bosses to see us and say, wow, Joshua comes in at 7 a.m. every morning and then he leaves at 9 o'clock at night. Wow, very hardworking, very good. Well, if you were going to do that for the whole week or the bulk of the week, it's going to be very tough on you to remain faithful as a Christian. It's going to be very difficult for you to exercise your call as a Christian if you cannot make it for Bible studies, if you cannot meet with fellow brothers and sisters, you are unable to encourage and pray for one another. So, instead of putting in 60 to 70-hour work weeks every week, just so that you can impress your boss, just so that you can be valued by your company, here's a different approach I would like to share with you. In the 1980s, the top consulting firm, McKinsey and Company, they use the term the T-shaped man, and they use this to recruit and develop their people. Other variations, such as the I-shaped or double T-shaped individual, have been used to describe an individual's skill set. Now, there are other shapes, of course, but I'll just focus on these three. What's all this about? Now, the vertical line in the shapes describes a person's depth of knowledge. It usually shows that a person is specialized in a particular field or discipline. The horizontal line, however, describes some level of knowledge, not deep, over a broad range of disciplines or fields. Now, the I shape. In our grandparents' time and those before that, you'll find it hard to see them change from one kind of job to another different kind of job to another job. It's just unheard of in that time. Back then, there's this famous saying, and people used to wear it like a badge. And they used to say this: I am a one company man, meaning I've only worked for that one company my whole life. Now, almost all our grandparents' generations and the generations before that, they fall in this I shaped skill set. An I shaped individual is what some people would call a specialist because that person only has knowledge and experience in that one single type of job. If the person with I shaped skills specialize in, let's say, painting, he or she would find it very difficult to do something other than painting. Now, the T shaped individual. The T shaped individual has a specialization, just like the I shape, but they also have knowledge and experience in a large number of other disciplines. A T shaped person is basically a jack of all trades and a master of one. Employers really like these kinds of individuals because today's problems often require a multi pronged approach to solve. Say, for example, you are in charge of releasing the iPhone 15. You're the team captain, but you're an electrical engineer. So your deep specialization is engineering, right? You make things. Now, to sell the iPhone well, you cannot only build an amazing device, you have to make sure that the marketing is done right. You also have to make sure that the price is just nicely where people would actually buy it. You cannot price it too high. But the question is, how much should you price it? You need to make sure the packaging is just perfect, the design top notch, and so on, so forth. Now, imagine if you're in charge of this whole operation and you only knew electrical engineering and nothing else. It will be a huge problem when you need to work with people from other disciplines. The T shaped man or woman will view a problem from different angles, even though your specialty is, for example, engineering. You'll be able to work with people from other disciplines better because you speak the same language. You'll be able to have better suggestions because of your broad understanding of things, and you'll also be flexible in how you try to solve that one problem. But don't get me wrong, there is still incredible value in having a specialty that you have deep knowledge in. That's the one that provides you a foundation on how to acquire skills in other topics because you developed that one discipline. And that one discipline trained you to learn how to learn. With this understanding of the T shaped individual, it's going to be quite easy for me to explain to you the pie shaped skill set. Now, I prefer calling it the double T because that's how it was first introduced to me. The reason why it's called double T is because it looks like there's two T's combined together. That's all. Now, the double T has two specializations and it has some level of knowledge or experience across a broad number of topics. Why would you want to have two specializations? Firstly, it could be for job security. These days, the nature of work has changed so much that because of technology, your one specialization might be replaced by an automatic system or an automation system. Having two specialties gives you the versatility to choose which leg to stand on, since you have more than one leg. On top of that, organizations depend more and more on people who have more than one specialization. You might have one specialization in architecture, but as you rise up the ranks, guess what? You actually need to start selling. You need to get customers. So that means you would need another specialization in sales. You might need to build that specialization as you rise up the ranks. You might be an engineer, but as you rise up the ranks, you'll also need to be a good coach to junior engineers. And coaching is not a typically acquired skill in the field of engineering. You might be a teacher in school, but for instance, like right now in the MCO, you would actually need to be able to teach using technology well. Now, I'm going to share with you a story about my friend. And this friend of mine, she used to work in an oil refinery. She's an engineer, and that's all she knows, right? That's a deep specialization, engineering, chemical engineering to be exact. And in her entire company, she is one of few engineers who actually can speak Mandarin very well. And suddenly, her company got bought over by a Chinese company. Just like that, this lowly engineer and her 12 years of learning Mandarin made her really valuable to her new employers. Now that you understand the three different shapes, you'll find that people who have T-shaped skill sets or double T-shaped skill sets, they will be able to provide well-rounded recommendations and discussions. The ability to provide a well thought out perspective is invaluable. It's so important. These are the ones who are able to adapt to the changing needs of jobs today. Eventually, these are the kinds of people that will advance in their careers and become people your bosses will really rely on. All we are doing at the end of the day at work is just solving problems. You don't want to solve the engineering problem to find out that later you didn't think of the marketing problem, or you didn't think of the packaging problem, or you didn't think of the cost problem. So now you're asking me, okay, Joshua, I get it. Now, how do I build my skill sets then? Well, let's first gain that one skill first, that deep specialization. Once you have specialized in that one thing, it's much easier to gain knowledge in other areas because you should have learned how to learn. If you went to university to study accounting, that's your one specialization. And you further develop this specialization by doing that job for 3 years, 5 years, or even more. And what you will notice is that you're almost always going to start off I shaped. This is why you might get advice from your parents or mentors to not keep changing jobs every 6 months. If you keep changing jobs every 6 months, you are not going to be there long enough to actually develop any proper specialization. How do you develop some level of capability across a wide range of topics? Well, this is based on your curiosity and your interest, isn't it? This could involve reading a lot, listening to podcasts, doing an online course, learning from a mentor, or even trying out something new for fun. Which specializations should I choose, you ask me? Well, you often want to find specializations that can sort of work together. But I don't want to make it a hard and fast rule. I once had a fluid mechanics lecturer, and during the weekends, she would play the violin. She's like a concert violinist, really good. And you know what? Einstein, he used to gain scientific insights while playing the violin. So I don't want to make it a hard and fast rule on which skills you should develop. But what I can recommend is a range of topics which one should normally have some understanding in. And these range of topics usually are going to help you quite tremendously in your careers and in your daily lives. These kind of topics usually range from personal finance, marketing, sales, and also knowing how to use Microsoft Excel. And perhaps this is what your double T could look like. Some of you may ask, why not have more than 2 specializations? Can I have 5? Sure, why not? But it usually takes quite a long time to develop one specialization. So to have 5 specializations may not really mean 5 specializations. Having a primary and maybe a secondary specialization can help you stay focused and make sure you go really deep. Being T-shaped is normal if you read and learn just about everything. But being double T requires actual effort to build a second specialization. As I mentioned earlier, maybe you might need to go and do a diploma for it, or change jobs, or you would actually have to do it alongside your career, which would mean a lot of time needs to be put aside for that. I hope you guys can see why this is super useful. We live in a world today where people who study accounting can end up working as a programmer. We live in a world today where people who study engineering end up going to become bankers instead. People no longer hire you just for your paper qualifications, but what skills you have. In that same way, employers value you for the skills you have and how fast you are at developing existing and building new skills. Now, let's recall why this is super important for a Christian. Our goals and lives should ultimately be to glorify God, to build His church, to love God's people. Workplaces are not always going to be kind to its employees. Bosses and colleagues can be very unreasonable, and office politics can be a real struggle at times. You'll hear about this and learn how to navigate this from Winnie in a talk later. In the end, as Christians, we want to have the right proportions from our work when it comes to money, career progression, and time, so that we can glorify God as best as we can. To emphasize one would mean having to sacrifice some of the other two. And time is a very, very important resource that we need to build and love God's people. So as you become more and more relied upon, aka more valuable in your workplace, instead of asking your boss for a higher pay and promotions, perhaps you would negotiate for more time and perhaps for more flexibility. Or if you're earning too little, you may even want to negotiate for a higher pay so that you can better support ministries in your giving or take care of your family. At the end of the day, it's all about achieving the best proportions that give the most glory to God. Now, let me finish by reading to you some lessons Jesus taught his disciples. Matthew chapter 16, verse 19 to 21. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Just a little bit down at verse 24. No one can serve two masters, since either he will hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. So that's it from me, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Now, if you have questions, do save it for our live Q&A session later at 4 p.m. I hope to see you there. Bye.